Good morning, everyone. Again, thanks for the introduction. I'm Satya Parimi from Spectrum Enterprise, which is part of Charter Communications. Spectrum Enterprise primarily focuses on serving business needs of large enterprises and mid-market customers. Today, I'm going to talk about the need for creating new network services for the digital economy. I'm sure there's a lot already been said about the need for changing how we build and deliver services today because customer needs are changing pretty quickly. Customers are digitizing and moving to the cloud. That comes with it a different set of requirements from a network service provider perspective, the services we offer to them, and how we deliver the services in near real time. So today, I'll focus a little bit on how can we rethink or reimagine new network services for the future, leveraging the power of software, which provides a lot of infinite possibilities with regards to creating new and innovative services. We've seen software come to various other industries and completely transform those industries. We've seen what has happened to applications with SaaS. We've seen what has happened to the computing space with infrastructure as a service. But I think finally we have software coming to networking, and that radically can change what we can do, what we can offer, and how we can offer services to customers. So before we go into that, let's start with where we are today. Today, network services are fairly static. If you take the example, I'm going to illustrate it with an example of a multi-site customer. So you have a customer with multiple locations, data centers, regional offices, branch offices, remote offices. We typically serve them with a WAN to connect all these locations. In a hub and spoke model, even if you have a multi-point to multi-point, most traffic goes hub and spoke. You probably throw in an internet connection from your main headquarters or data center. And there is set expectations on how much bandwidth is needed at each of these locations, how you route traffic across these locations. And this has worked for a number of years and worked very well, by the way. But there's a lot of things happening across these locations for our customers. With the advent of cloud and the use of software as a service, there's a need for getting to the cloud more often from more places. We're also seeing the emergence of hyperscale clouds. From a computing perspective, you need to get to the cloud more often, again, from more locations. The users in these locations are also changing. The number of users, the mobility of the users, they're no longer tied to a location. They're nomadic, move between offices. The number of devices at these locations are also changing. These are just some of the key changes that we're seeing in these businesses at these various locations. And those require us to adopt and change the network service to support them. And we're not fully there right now. So let's take an example of you want to add new services. They're not, like I said, they're not easy to do. You want to add an internet connection, let's say, from the remote office. It can be done. It's not easy. It's not quick. It's cumbersome. You need to do a truck roll. You need to impact the customer. You need to make changes in the service provider's network. Let's say you want to change connectivity at the data center. You want more bandwidth. You want another connectivity type. You want to route traffic between these locations or between these access connections. Again, can be done, but not easy, real-time, or quick. The big challenge or the reason for why we're in this situation is because we've traditionally looked at network services as integrated monoliths, right? A little bit of bandwidth, a little bit of software, some hardware, some routing. All of that together is one service, which is great in terms of delivering the service, but it's not easy to change it, because you can't change one aspect of the service without impacting the other aspect of the service. And that's one of the key impediments for really transforming what we can do from a service delivery perspective. So now let's look at how we can potentially leverage software to reimagine and rethink how we deliver these services. So one potential path is we just disaggregate the network service. What does that mean? We break the network service into its various components and separate them out so that they're not one giant integrated monolith. So you start with connectivity, the core base of any service. You layer on some network functions like routing, firewall, typically associated with what happens in big iron, hardware boxes at the edge or in the core of the network. And then you have management on top, which is typically associated primarily with portals and a managed service potentially. But by breaking the network service definition into these individual components and having these components all operate independent of each other and having these components talk to each other through software or through APIs, it opens up a whole new world of what you can build in terms of a dynamic service. And I think that's the possibility of what software can do for us from defining and creating some of these new services. So the combination of these together, you can create network-based services. What kind of services? These are services that could be customizable across the building blocks. You could have connectivity from service provider A, and then service provider B could be using and offering the network functions and management to deliver the service. Or it could be delivered across 3 different service providers, as an example. You would be able to have more automated and configurable services and delivery of these services because these components are all individual. They talk to each other and operate independently. You can make changes at each layer, and they can flow through to the other layer. A classic example would be you significantly increase your connectivity. Let's say you're going from 1 gig to 10 gig. You don't need to put a new box in place because now your capacity is gone. With some of these network functions running in software within the network, you can very quickly scale up and handle this increased bandwidth requirement or a new functionality that you need. So the one way to think about these network services is by breaking apart these components, not only how we design these, but potentially in the future, how we monetize these services as well in terms of the packaging and price components involved in the service could be broken down into these subcategories. So this high level, this is the concept. Let's look at how we can look at this in real time. We can potentially create a brand new dynamic service using these components by putting these part pieces together. Let's look at some examples here, right? Let's start with connectivity. Connectivity, you could have, I just used for illustration purposes some different options for connectivity here. You could have different connectivity types based on fiber, coax, LTE, Wi-Fi, TDM, MPLS. But we need, for services of the future, a range of connectivity options. I think having some connectivity is not enough. With services, with new network services, what we're seeing increasingly is the need for almost 100% availability of the service. And that can only be done truly if you have redundant connectivity options at the location, and that's something that is very critical. So having connectivity is important, but multiple connectivity choices is important. It's also important to have different characteristics for these networks as well. You could have one probably low performance, low cost connectivity option. You could have a higher cost, higher performance characteristic option so that you can pick and choose what kind of connectivity you can have. From a network function perspective, again, some high-level examples here. You could break these apart, primarily have these operating software where you have different network functions that can be chained together to deliver a combination of functions into a service. And these also would be working across different connectivity types. So the advantage of breaking this apart is you could have a network function operate across 2 different connectivity types. The world where we have 2 or even 3 connectivity solutions at a location is a big possibility to meet some of these customer needs for how they want to route traffic and what cost profile they want to have for the services they buy today. So layered on top would be management. Again, some examples of functions and capabilities that we can offer through management. And I think this is another area that probably does not get a lot of attention today because typically management means you get a portal, you either get it for free or you have the service provider run or manage the service for you. As we provide a lot more dynamic services, the need for more visibility and control into the service increases quite a bit, right? With all this flexibility comes a lot of complexity, a lot of control as well. So a lot of these management functions potentially can be monetized on a go-forward basis, and that provides a great new area of opportunity for service providers. So once you have this construct, right, these are the various service attributes that you can use. Now you can start building products across these components. Let's take the example. You want to create an internet service. You can see to your, I guess, your left, the stuff in yellow, which is a set of connectivity, which is fiber, a couple of network functions and management together. You can build dynamically an internet service. You could potentially chain in, service chain in content filtering, primarily mostly from software. You could choose to add another connectivity to it as well, and you would want your internet service to work across, let's say both fiber and coax. With that comes the opportunity for upselling the customer business policies, because all traffic is not the same. Customers say, I'm paying X for one connectivity and Y for another connectivity. Certain high-value traffic, I want to put it over fiber. Maybe other low-value traffic, I want to put it over coax. So I want the ability to apply business policies for routing, not statically, dynamically, that they can control and change. So now you've created the opportunity to upsell potential business policies as an add-on service on top. So this is one way you can think about building from the ground up across these component services and monetizing additional functions in the management layer. The other option, let's take the example of a WAN service. You hear a combination of two connectivity types, some network functions, and some management. It could be a WAN service. Is it layer 2? Is it layer 3? Do the customers care? It's about the functionality and the flexibility of delivering on the customer's need and abstracting the complexity and the technology from them underneath. So this is one way we can think about creating these more dynamic services. I've not focused on how this actually gets delivered. There's not, I guess, enough time to go through it, but let me just say that there is a lot of innovation happening in the software space, especially software-defined platforms, where we can leverage some of the capabilities there to make this a reality. So this all sounds interesting, very exciting, a lot of mix and match. You can do some very cool things. But with this flexibility comes a lot of complexity, right? And somebody and somewhere we need to handle the complexity. So that's where standards come in, and that's where collaboration in the industry comes in as well. It's absolutely critical as we move forward to create these new services of the future that there are standards we all work together on and we collaborate together on. Primarily that comes about because we're mixing and matching and disaggregating services. So the service definitions themselves can increase many-fold. So what is internet access for Spectrum Enterprise could mean something else for Comcast, AT&T, or Verizon. How the service is delivered could be different across these service providers as well. So that's where I think MEF helps with providing a path forward, and you've all seen the MEF 3.0 announcement earlier this morning. And it's a great framework that we can collaborate on to make sure we can have these next-gen services that are defined with the LSO APIs, how they're delivered. And then we also have a community we can rely on of innovators who can help move the ball forward quicker. And all of this is packaged together with the certification program. And as we've seen with CE 2.0, and Spectrum has been a major supporter and major user of the 2.0 program and the brand, it has helped tremendously to drive adoption of services and taking of market share for CE 2.0. And we hope with 3.0 as well, and the collaboration across the industry between vendors, service providers, I think we can come up with standard ways in which we can define and deliver these next-gen services. So as a summary here, we all seem to agree that there's a need for change. We're all working on change, and we have organizations like the MEF helping us on that path. So while that's going on, we at Spectrum Enterprise are very excited to be a part of that. So we've already started working on this. 3.0 helps by providing a framework, but the constructs around the need for new dynamic services is something we've been thinking about for a while. And let me walk you through quickly on what we are doing along this journey of creating these new innovative services. From a connectivity perspective, we're very focused on coverage and choice, along with scalability for customers and businesses. As you're all aware, the Spectrum Enterprise has pretty expansive coverage from both fiber, Ethernet-based fiber, and also coax, and pretty soon to have gig speeds in a couple of months in a number of key markets. We already have extensive coverage, but we still continue to invest heavily in the connectivity side of things because it's critically important that there is choice at each of these locations for businesses for multiple access types and not just one service only, because bandwidth, yes, is important. Having a lot of bandwidth is important, but the characteristics of the bandwidth is also important. You need SLAs for certain applications and certain traffic types. You would need physically redundant connectivity as well for 100% uptime. So it's absolutely critical to make sure that there is continued investment so that there is a lot of choice for connectivity for customers. Once you have choice and once you have connectivity everywhere, the other key thing that we're very focused on is being able to configure and manage that connectivity in near real time, especially to drive and support automation and service orchestration on top. So it's absolutely critical that we have a lot of connectivity and we can manage that connectivity as well. And outside of our footprint, we're still actively working with our service provider partners to make sure through interconnects, a lot of them CE 2.0 certified, we can more transactionally buy-sell connectivity today and hopefully services and deliver deliver services across these cross-connects in the future. From a network functions perspective, we're very focused on dynamic and flexible platforms, primarily software-defined platforms. An example of that is our hybrid SD-WAN platform. I can't go through that right now in the interest of time, but I highly recommend you visit us in our booth 300, and we are in the POC showcase as well. We can show you how we're looking at these new software-defined platforms with some key capabilities around extensibility to support additional network functions and connectivity types. These platforms need to be instrumented for visibility and control to enable management on top. We should be able to rapidly activate new functions and also be able to apply business policies in real time. But the one very, very important thing I want to call out here is the path to migration for legacy services. While new services sound exciting, interesting, and a lot of potential demand from customers, there is a significant amount of legacy static network services that are out there. And they're not going to be all flash cut or quickly replaced by something over the top. There needs to be a path for moving these legacy services to the next-gen services. So having platforms and solutions in place that can help these new services and legacy services to coexist for a while so that they can be migrated forward is absolutely critical, and that's an area we're extremely focused on to make sure we assist in that migration of services forward. And finally on management, we're really focused on choice again. Visibility and control, everybody expects, but the key for us is making sure we're providing choice for businesses when it comes to management of services. If you take a typical managed services continuum, there's two ends of the extreme. There's self-service on one end, most commonly do-it-yourself, and on the other end is a fully managed service that the service provider does it. You could potentially get a portal on one end, you could get a dashboard on the other end, but these are the general managed services constructs we're seeing today. But increasingly, we're hearing about seeing new constructs around managed services that are kind of in the middle, or we call them co-managed. I don't know if there's a name for it. You see a lot of this in the multi-cloud environment in the cloud space, where A portion of the service is managed by the user, the end user, and the other portion is managed by the service provider. This provides flexibility and control for both parties here because as these services evolve and change, there is a need to make sure that there is capabilities for both sides to use the service. And along this continuum also, we're looking at newer services around template-based managed services that provides a good balance of what the service provider can do and what the end user could do. So you can see we've been busy. We've been doing a lot of work down this path of next-gen networks. We're excited to hear about the MEF 3.0 program. We're very much looking forward to working with all the vendors and service provider partners here to make this journey to these next-generation products and next-generation services a reality. Thank you.